Well, praise the Lord, saints. This is the day that the Lord has made. He has instructed us to rejoice and to be glad in it. And it's another day in the land of the living, another day to give glory and honor and praise unto our God. Well, that's what we're going to do. And today we continue, as it's the last day on the calendar for Black History, but we're not stopping on this day. Today we're going to talk about Zion and a few other leaders of when this intrusion of the Canaanites happened. And Sihon, his name means rooted out. So he was the Amorite king, and he was from Heshbon, the chief city of Sion. He conquered the Moabite and became ruler of the land. So their king, he conquered their king. He became the ruler of the land. When Israel requested safe passage through his territory, Sion rejected their request. Instead, he gathered all his people to suppress Israel. So they fought at Jahaz, where King Sion suffered his first battle loss. Sion's defeat was a triumph for Israel. They took all his cities, they took all his villages, they divided them all among the tribes of Reuben and Gad and Manasseh. Sion and his comrades were blacks, they were Hamites, and they came through Canaan, obviously, from Ham. All right. Anyway, some of that you can read that. Genesis chapter 10, verse 16, Numbers 21, Deuteronomy chapter 1. Verse 4. So you can look through there and you can see the history and how that took place. The next one is Og, O-G. His name means giant. So King Og, he was an Amorite ruler of the strategic city of Bashan, which was well fortified with those high walls, and they always had a ready army on standby. Og never dreamed such an insufficient force as Israel could annihilate him, so he prepared for battle and met them at his chief city, Edrei. There he fought, expecting a major victory. But Israel instead gave him something he wasn't expecting. So instead, he experienced the agony of defeat. His territories, just like Sion's, were separated among the tribes of Israel. King Og was one of the last remnant giant-like kings. His bedstead amazed Moses. Its dimensions were 13 feet by 6 feet, and it was made of iron. That's in Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 11. You can check that out. He had an enormous build. Og, like Sion, was black. He was a descendant of Ham through Canaan. Genesis chapter 10, verse 6, and also 15 and 16. The Hebrew guerrilla warfare of Canaan triggered great resentment, causing hundreds of thousands of black Canaanites to exile to Africa. So it says, we are exiles who were rulers of Canaan, but were pushed from our land by Joshua the robber. We have come to reside here. The only modern tribe like the black biblical Rephaim, which is Rephaim, is in Genesis chapter 15, verse 18 to 20. He was a tall tribe of black giants, known to be of giant stature, and they were called the Watusis, and they are now living in East Central Africa. The average height of them is over 7 feet and 6 inches, and there are no other races on earth which grows to such heights. Since the land of Canaan, now called Palestine in our day, Palestine was territorially adjoined to Africa, many black giant-like Canaanites fled the land during Israel's intrusion. They migrated south and settled in Central Africa, where they gradually decreased in height due to crossbreeding with people of smaller nature. Genesis chapter 10, verse 16, Numbers chapter 21, verses 33 to 35, Deuteronomy chapter 3, verse 1. Let's go to another person we all have heard. Rahab. Rahab's name means proud. Rahab was a black woman from the Canaanite city called Jericho, which was surrounded by such popular Hamite cities such as Gibeon and Beruth and Jerusalem. When Joshua sent spies into Rahab's city, she hid them, right? And she had that thread of stock on her roof, so she put them there so they could hide from the soldiers that were looking for them. Rahab had heard about the Jews. She had heard about their God who rescued them from Africa and subdued their foes in Canaan. And not only that, she knew her people could not withstand their strength. So out of fear, Rahab concealed the spies and began to bargain with them concerning security. She pleaded with them to spare her and her kinsmen during the seizure of Jericho. This request was approved by the two men in regard to her courtesy. After the spies completed their mission, Rahab hauled them down by a scarlet thread through her window and advised them to hide themselves within the mountains for 3 days to avoid their pursuers. But before they departed, they cautioned her that upon their return, she should remain in her quarters with a scarlet cord hanging from her window, and that her life and her kinsmen's lives would be spared if she revealed their business to the king. So, I mean, they would not be spared if she told. So now when Rahab confirmed all that was said, everything that they asked or the request that they made, she and all her relatives made final arrangements to get out of there. When the messengers journeyed to the camp and notified Joshua of their experience, he instantly, unlike somebody that was before him by the name of Moses, he instantly prepared his people to overthrow Jericho. For God had instructed him as to the manner in which to take the city. He was to march around it 6 times, once a day. Then on the 7th day, he was to circle it, go around it 7 times with the sound of trumpets and a loud shout. So when Joshua did as he was told to do, the walls of Jericho fell to the earth, and only Rahab, the harlot, and a few kinsmen were spared. Rahab lived among the Israelites, and there she married a Jew by the name of Salmon, an ancient. Salmon is actually an ancestor of Jesus Christ, who fathered her a child named Boaz. I don't need to go no further than that. You know who's coming through that line. Genesis chapter 9, verse 18, Joshua chapter 2, chapter 2, verse 1, chapter 6, verse 1, First Chronicles chapter 2, 11 to 3, and Ruth chapter 4, verse 21, Matthew chapter 1, verse 5. You need a little more. And then there was Abra. Abra was a giant Canaanite who became, his name Abra, A-R-B-A, it means 4. He became pretty much one of the people that brought forth the super giant race called Anakims. You probably heard that, seen it. In Joshua chapter 14, verse 15, Abra is called the great man among the Anakim. His son Anak, meaning long neck, was also instrumental in producing this giant race. The Anakim inhabited the mountainous regions of Canaan, and their chief city was found in Kirjath Arba, later called Hebron. And it was here that the 12 Hebrew spies first saw them. The Anakim's gigantic stature caused great terror among the Israelites, as they alleged these giants as being descendants of the pre-flood Nephilims. And when comparing sizes, the Hebrews considered themselves as grasshoppers. So you remember, that's the report they brought back to Moses. They're like, we are grasshoppers, and they're saying, they'll kill us. They brought back a bad report. Well, at least 10 of them did. Numbers chapter 13, verse 33, Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 21. The Anakim's enormous strength and you can read that in Numbers chapter 13, verse 28 to 32, obviously produced the proverbial saying, who can stand before the children of Anak? Deuteronomy chapter 9, verses 1 to 3. When Joshua advanced through Canaan with the help of Yahweh, the Negro black Anakim were pushed from the mountains to the coastal areas of the black Philistines. They soon afterward regained some of their territory, which was later reconquered by Caleb, who also seized their city, well, their chief city, which was Hebron. The great Anakim was a black giant race from Ham to Canaan. The most popular individuals of the Anakim, besides Abra and Anak, were Ahiman, Shishai, and Talmai, Numbers 13, chapter verse 22. There were other black giant groups called Zamzumans or the Zuzim, Emin, and Raphaim, Genesis chapter 14, verse 5, Deuteronomy chapter 2, verses 10 to 11. When the Hebrews first entered the land of Canaan, they did not encounter a Semitic or Caucasian race, but a Hamitic Negro race from Canaan. The tallest race in the world is the Black Watusi, now living in East Central Africa. They resemble the giants in the Bible more than any other people, with long necks and heights over 7 feet and 6 inches. The Semites and Caucasians have never possessed this giant-like trait. Therefore, the original people of Canaan, with their extraordinary statures, their long necks, etc., could not have possibly been Semites or Caucasians, but were black from Ham, who bears and produced these giant-like characteristics to this day. All right, let's go to our next person, which is Adonai. Adonai Zedek. His name means Lord of Justice. Adonai Zedek was the king of Jerusalem during Israel's invasion. When the cities of Jericho and Ai fell into the hand of Israel, which would be Gibeon, a Hivite city, betrayed Adonai Zedek by siding with Joshua. This alliance angered the king to seek vengeance upon the Gibeonites, and with 4 Amorite kings, he formed a federation to destroy them. The Gibeonites knew they were outnumbered, so they asked Joshua for military support, which was granted to them. The battle took place near Mekkedah, where King Adonai Zedek's forces took an early defeat. Israel and Gibeon, by the hand of Yahweh, slew them by the thousands. It came to pass as they fled, Yahweh cast great stones from heaven upon them, which killed more than Israel killed with her swords. King Adonai Zedek and the 4 Amorite kings fled with fear and hid themselves in a cave at Mekkedah. They were soon apprehended and slain. The Jabins, who were black generals of Hazah, which is Joshua chapter 11, verse 1, offered much resistance to the Hebrew invasion of Canaan. The latter Jabin opposed the intruders for 20 years. Judges chapter 4, verse 1 to 3, Psalm 83rd division of Psalm, verse 9. All right, so those five kings, if you read about it in Joshua chapter 10, around verse 16, it says that the 5 kings were hidden in the caves. Verse 24, that he was instructed to put their foot on their neck, basically snap their neck with the feet. Next person, Japhia, which means splendor. Japhia was an Amorite king of Lachish, who joined King Adonai Zedek's league against Gibeon, which was the city occupied by the black Hivites and the Amorites. He was captured and executed by Joshua near the caves. All right, so that was that last piece we talked about a minute ago. He was one of those kings that was killed there. Piram, his name means fleet. Piram was an Amorite king of Jarmuth, who helped 4 neighboring kings to invade Gibeon, another one of that group. You know, they were defeated by Israel. He ran to that cave. He was killed as well. Jehovah, while devastating the Amorites, says that their height was like the height of cedars, and they were strong as oaks. Amos chapter 2, verse 9, Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 1. All right, and Adonai Bezek. His name means Lord of Bezek. So Adonai-Bezek was a Hamitic king of a Canaanite city named Bezek. He conquered many petty kings, and his inhuman tactics caused much horror. He was notorious for having amputated the thumbs and toes of 70 conquered kings and forcing his captives to eat food under his table. When the men of Judah and Simeon made war with Bezek and the Perizzites, King Adonai Bezek was defeated and received the same treatment he had imposed on other kings. During his captivity, he announced, "As I have done, so God has requited me." The black Canaanites, being the children of Noah from Ham, were aware of Yahweh's entity, but chose not to worship him. Instead, they clung to the gods of Baal, Baalat, Adonis, etc. Many of these deities were frequently praised by the Hebrews. Solomon worshipped many black Canaanite gods, including the goddess Ashtoreth. The Hebrew people were basically an idolatrous race, and since the Exodus had worshipped abominable images. And you can read in the Bible, Deuteronomy chapter 9, verse 12, chapter 32, verse 21, Judges chapter 17, verse 3, 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 5 to 8, 2 Kings chapter 17, verses 9 to 12, 2 Chronicles chapter 33, verse 7, 106th division of Psalm, verse 19, Deuteronomy 18, 10 to 11. Moses strictly warned the Hebrews to avoid consultation with the necromancer, a person who is supposed to predict the future by communicating with the dead, doing what we would call black magic or witchcraft, a warning King Saul totally ignored. 1 Samuel chapter 1, verse 1 Samuel chapter 28, verses 1 to 25. The expression necromancer is equivalent to the medieval Latin, which is nigromantia, and the Greek necromantia. According to Oxford English Dictionary, the term necromancer is synonymous to the words of black, Negro, Nigra, Negre, Negre, Negro, Nigro, Necro, and Necro. Necromancy was also practiced by the Greeks. And you can read that in Judges chapter 1, verses 3 to 7. So we're going to stop for today, and we're going to continue on. I told you it's the end of February, but we got some more Black history in the Bible that we're going to try to cover as we continue during the week. I thank God for you. I thank God for your life. I thank God that you are who God called you to be. I decree and declare over you that you are who God says you are. You're the head and not the tail. You're above and not beneath. You're blessed going out and blessed coming in, and the favor of God is upon your life. I decree it, I declare it, and it is so in Jesus' name. God bless you. Have a blessed rest of your day.